France, from revolution to republic. The French Revolution wasn't just a power struggle, it was a full-blown social upheaval. In 1789, the people overthrew the monarchy, stormed the Bastille, and declared the birth of the French Republic. The revolution brought radical change but also chaos, with the Reign of Terror and the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, who would declare himself emperor. After Napoleon's fall, France oscillated between republics, empires, and monarchies. Today, France is a stable republic, but the echoes of that revolution, the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, still shape the country. The revolution changed the face of Europe forever, but it left France with a complex, often turbulent political legacy. Russia, the rise and fall of the Soviet Union. In 1917, Russia exploded in revolution. The Tsar was overthrown, and the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power. What followed was the creation of the Soviet Union, a massive communist empire that spanned much of Eurasia. But the revolution didn't come without costs. Civil war, famine, and Stalin's brutal purges marked the rise of the USSR. By the late 1980s, economic stagnation and a wave of reform led to the fall of the Soviet Union. The world watched as 15 republics declared independence. Today, Russia remains a superpower, but the legacy of the revolution lives on in both pride and pain, influencing global politics to this day. United States, the birth of a nation. The American Revolution wasn't just about a colony throwing off the shackles of a distant empire. It was the birth of a new kind of country, where the people governed themselves. In 1776, the 13 colonies declared independence from Britain, and after a brutal war, they won. The revolution led to the creation of the U.S. Constitution and the birth of the United States as a new republic. The revolution's success inspired global movements for freedom, but it also left unresolved issues like slavery, Native American displacement, and economic inequality. Today, the U.S. stands as a global power, but the ideals of freedom born in the revolution are constantly being tested. China, the communist takeover. In 1949, China was a country in turmoil. After years of war and revolution, the Chinese Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong, took control, ending centuries of imperial rule. The revolution's promises of equality and prosperity were quickly overshadowed by the brutal realities of communist rule. From the Great Leap Forward to the Cultural Revolution, Mao's regime caused millions of deaths and years of upheaval. Since his death in 1976, China has evolved into an economic powerhouse, but the memory of its revolutionary past remains. The Chinese Communist Party still holds power, but its version of revolution is now one of economic reform rather than strict ideology. Mexico, the revolution's long shadow. Mexico's revolution, which began in 1910, was a bloody and transformative struggle against dictatorship, land inequality, and corruption. Leaders like Pancho Villa and Emiliano Zapata became legends as they fought for the rights of the poor. While the revolution succeeded in overthrowing the old regime, Mexico struggled with instability, violence, and corruption in the years that followed. The revolution created a new social order, but didn't fully fix the inequalities it aimed to address. Today, Mexico is a democratic nation, but the effects of the revolution, especially its emphasis on land reform, are still felt, particularly in rural areas where poverty remains high. Cuba, a communist experiment. In 1959, Fidel Castro and his revolutionary forces overthrew Cuba's dictator, Fulgencio Batista. The Cuban Revolution promised a socialist paradise for the people, but it came at a cost. The country became a one-party state under Castro's rule, and Cuba's alignment with the Soviet Union placed it at the center of Cold War tensions. The revolution brought free healthcare and education, but also repressive policies that stifled dissent. Today, Cuba is still under communist rule, but the country's once isolated economy is slowly opening up to the world. The revolution's legacy is complex, an example of revolution and resistance, but also of political control and economic hardship. Iran, from monarchy to Islamic republic. In 1979, Iran's revolution changed the country forever. The Shah, a Western-backed monarch, was overthrown by a movement led by Ayatollah Khomeini, who established an Islamic republic. The revolution swept away centuries of monarchy and modernized policies, replacing them with strict Shia Islamic rule. Iran became an epicenter for revolutionary movements in the Middle East, but it also became a pariah state for the West. Today, the country remains an Islamic republic, and while it has significant economic and cultural influence, it still faces major challenges from both internal dissent and international isolation. Egypt, the battle for freedom. In 2011, Egypt's revolution took the world by storm. After weeks of protests, Egyptians toppled President Hosni Mubarak's nearly 30-year dictatorship. The revolution promised a new era of democracy, but instead, it led to instability. After the brief rule of the Muslim Brotherhood, the country fell back into military control under President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Despite this, the revolution sparked a wave of democratic movements across the Arab world, and Egypt remains a symbol of the struggle for freedom. But the revolution's aftermath has been marked by political repression, human rights abuses, and a country still grappling with what true democracy means. Haiti, the first Black Republic. Haiti's revolution, which began in 1791, was nothing short of groundbreaking. It was the first successful slave revolt in history, leading to the creation of the world's first Black Republic. Under the leadership of figures like Toussaint Louverture, enslaved Africans overthrew French colonial rule and established Haiti as an independent nation. However, the revolution came at a heavy cost. Despite its success, Haiti faced economic isolation and political instability, which led to poverty and corruption. Today, Haiti remains the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, struggling to recover from the scars of its revolutionary past. Germany, the fall of the wall. Germany's revolution didn't happen overnight. It was years of unrest, division, and pressure that led to the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. The wall had been the physical symbol of the Cold War, dividing East and West Germany. The revolution that brought it down was peaceful, sparked by protests in East Germany and a wave of reform across Eastern Europe. The fall of the wall marked the beginning of Germany's reunification. The reunification process was difficult, leading to economic disparity and social tension between the former East and West. Today, Germany is unified, but the shadow of the wall still lingers in the differences between the regions. Vietnam, from war to reconciliation. Vietnam's revolution was one of the bloodiest in history, culminating in the Vietnam War. After the war ended in 1975 with the victory of the North, the country was unified under communist rule. The revolution's aftermath was difficult. The country was left in ruins, with decades of isolation and economic struggle. However, in the 1980s and 1990s, Vietnam began to open up, embracing market reforms that transformed it into one of Asia's fastest-growing economies. Today, Vietnam is still communist, but its rapid economic growth and increasing global influence mark the lasting effects of the revolution that once tore it apart. Chile, the aftermath of the Pinochet regime. In 1973, Chile experienced a violent coup that ended the democratic government of Salvador Allende. The military, led by General Augusto Pinochet, took control, and Chile became a brutal dictatorship. Pinochet's regime led to widespread torture, killings, and the suppression of political dissent. After his rule ended in 1990, Chile transitioned to democracy, but the scars of the revolution and dictatorship remain. The country has seen economic growth, but issues of human rights and justice for the victims of the Pinochet regime still linger. Chile's revolution and the following dictatorship have left a legacy of both trauma and resilience.